Hi people, well today I have a board because we're going to see a couple of questions that involve the process and I would like everybody to understand it. Basically we're discussing today three sections in the book. Yes, plenty of people power, a new state, and the age of faith and reason. In the section the first section says plenty of paper power, basically the book deals with the investiture struggle. We're not really interested in all the little intricacies of the investiture struggle. We're just we will focus mostly on the consequences of what it meant, and this was basically a fight between kings and the Pope. And then at the end of this, if you notice on page 144, it talks about the figure of the electoral princess in the Holy Roman Empire. These princes will eventually will be known as electors, and they will be relevant when we study the Protestant Reformation in a couple of classes. Then the question of faith and reason appears, and we're going to see that towards the 12th century, universities will be important, and they will start appearing in a number of places in Europe, and kings are going to intervene in founding and funding universities, and it's important to notice how this will affect the type of research and the content that these new figure, the scholar, are going to research and investigate. The church also was participating in this process because universities actually were run by the church. We in this class and in other parts of this genealogy, you're going to see I'm going to share some images and information about the two leading architectural schools at this time, that are the Romanesque and the Gothic. So there's more about that coming in the other parts of this genealogy. But what I want to emphasize now is the appearance of this new estate. And notice that this is a word, the word is estate, beginning with an E, and this refers to a new social group that was called, and is called even today, the bourgeoisie. Yes, and so this is why I need the board. So we have a number of questions that that were happening at the same time, or like along the years that we have been studying. Yes, on the one hand we have the Crusades. On the other hand, we have the agricultural revolution. And these two elements are going to kind of precipitate or speed up a process that will lead to the appearance of this new social group. Yeah. So first we look at the Crusades. Yes, we said that when the Crusades were happening, even from the very beginning, the First Crusade, what we see is an increased contact between Christendom in Europe and the lands in Asia Minor and the Far East. And basically what this contact resulted in was a whole new set of products that were brought and sold in Europe. Yeah, so the Crusades, among many other consequences that we covered last class, encouraged trade. The agricultural revolution that we also saw a couple of classes ago changed the ways of production in agriculture and basically created the possibility of two things: more productivity, that is, the lands produced more, and extra time for the peasants, because many peasants did not need to work so much because all the new changes in agriculture freed them up. And so these two elements created the possibility of extra production. Yes, remember that manors were self-contained units, and everything that was consumed there was produced there, and originally there wasn't much time for extra. But now, thanks to these two new sort of consequences of the agricultural revolution, what we have is extra production. So what did manors do with this extra production? Where basically they started looking for places where they could at first exchange it, and then eventually they sold it. Yeah, so we will see that slowly but steadily the manors are going to be turned into small units of production, and eventually they're going to bring those products back into towns, and these two elements are going to give rise to town fairs. Town fairs are going to be like weekly markets in which products are being brought by merchants from Asia, and surplus produced in the manors are going to be sold in towns. And this is going to create a whole new movement in the towns. Small villages are going to grow, towns are going to grow even more, and we're going to see a very slow process in which these new social groups are going to be the merchants that are exercising in this, plus some of the peasants that were successful and started selling more and eventually also sort of grew in the social scale, are going to move into towns and are going to form this new group that's going to be called the bourgeoisie. This new group is not made up of nobles, and these are not members of the clergy. These are members of this the third group that before this were mostly peasants, and now we see people that have money, that want power, that can buy stuff, and that can sit down and have conversations with the kings. And so this group is going to change the whole game for the social relations in Europe. And this is going to be a slow process that's going to begin at the moment we're studying now, around the 12th century, and it's going to eventually explain the social changes that we're going to see in the Renaissance. Another element that will appear together with the fairs and the question of trade and the questions of productivity are the guilds. Guilds are social groups, associations of people who do the same thing. Yes, for example, carpenters got together in a guild, weavers got together in a guild, shoemakers, and so on. And there were also guilds for merchants. Yeah, so we have craft guilds on the one hand and merchants guilds on the other hand. And they're going to work in different ways, but basically they're going to be a civilian associations of people with money trying to get power. Slowly, these guilds are going to start negotiating with the kings for more autonomy. And so this interaction between guilds and the bourgeois and the kings are going to, again, very slowly going to reinstate kings as the leading power in Europe. Remember that we said that in medieval Europe, society was fragmented and the manorial economy sort of ran the show, and the lords were the sort of the leaders in their little places. But now lords are going to lose power because guilds will try to negotiate with kings directly, and the kings are going to give guilds and bourgeois associations certain benefits in exchange for loyalty, not because the kings were nice, yes, but in exchange for loyalty. And so kings are slowly beginning to accumulate power, and this is another of the changes that we're going to see in the Renaissance.